The confetti cannon exploded with a sharp, deafening pop, instantly raining down a cloud of shimmering pink paper slips onto the perfectly manicured lawn of my parents' backyard. Cheers erupted from the 50 guests gathered for the gender reveal party, glasses of expensive champagne raised high in the afternoon sun. My sister, Fallen, squealed with a practiced delight that I had seen her rehearse in the mirror 1,000 times. She clutched her baby bump in a pose that was clearly designed for the photographer she had hired for the occasion. She grabbed the microphone from her husband, Bowen, her eyes scanning the crowd with a predatory glint until they landed squarely on me. A smirk, barely perceptible to anyone else but screaming volumes to me, curled the corner of her lips. "It's a girl," she announced, her voice trembling with theatrical emotion. "And we are so excited to welcome our little princess, Avalon." The name hit me like a physical blow to the chest, knocking the wind out of my lungs. The world seemed to tilt on its axis, the sounds of the party fading into a dull roar. Avalon. It wasn't just a name I liked, it was the name. It was the name I had whispered to my best friend, Maya, in the sterile hospital room hours before she passed away from leukemia when we were 22. We had promised each other, holding hands over the plastic bed rails, that whoever had a daughter first would name her Avalon, after the mythical island of healing where we used to pretend to go during her painful treatments. Fallen knew this story. I had told her the story in a rare moment of vulnerability years ago, crying on her shoulder. I froze, my drink sloshing onto my hand, sticky and cold. I watched my sister bask in the applause, stealing the one thing I had held sacred for 6 years. I walked over to her, pulling her slightly away from the crowd of admirers. "Fallen," I whispered, my voice shaking with a mixture of grief and rage. "You can't use Avalon, you know why that name matters to me. You know about Maya." Fallen laughed, a light, dismissive sound that chilled my blood. "Oh, Odette, grow up. You're single, you haven't been on a date in 2 years. Why should I save a perfectly good name for a fantasy baby that might never exist? It's wasted on you." Desperate for an ally who could understand the depth of this betrayal, I drove to my parents' house later that evening, hoping they would talk sense into her. I sat at the kitchen table, the smell of my mother's pot roast filling the air, a scent that usually brought comfort but now made me nauseous. Tears streamed down my face as I explained the cruelty of Fallen's choice. "It's Maya's legacy," I pleaded, my hands trembling on the tablecloth. "She knows how much it hurts me. She knows I promised Maya." My mother sighed, exchanging a look with my father that I knew all too well, the look that said, "Here goes Odette being difficult again." "Honey," my mother said, placing a dismissive hand on my arm. "Don't stress your sister out right now. She's pregnant. Hormones make people sensitive and she needs our support, not drama." "It's not just a name to me," I argued, my voice rising in desperation. "She did this on purpose. She could have picked any name in the world." My father shook his head, looking disappointed in me, as if I were the one causing a scene. "You're acting jealous, Odette. Just because Fallen is settling down with a wealthy man and you aren't doesn't mean you get to dictate her happiness. Being an aunt is enough. Be happy for her." I left the house feeling hollowed out, abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect me. As I sat in my car, staring at the dark dashboard, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Fallen. "I just think Avalon suits me better. It sounds high class, like royalty. You can name your kid something generic like Jane. Fits your vibe better." She wasn't just taking the name. She was taunting me with it, enjoying every second of my pain. In the weeks that followed, Fallen doubled down on the theft with a vengeance that felt personal. She didn't just use the name. She branded her entire existence with it. She launched an Instagram page called Avalon's Journey, posting daily updates about the little Avy growing inside her. She ordered custom-embroidered blankets from boutique shops, commissioned a neon sign for the nursery that read Avalon's Palace in bright pink script, and even wore jewelry with the initial A encrusted in diamonds. She made sure to tag me in every single post, a digital poke in the eye designed to remind me of my loss. She deliberately excluded me from the nursery planning, ignoring my texts asking if I could help paint, but she sent me links to the most expensive items on her registry. "Since you're the aunt," she texted, followed by a winking emoji, "you should buy the crib. It's the least you can do since you're not contributing grandchildren to the family." I stared at the name Avalon printed on the registry header, feeling a strange sense of déjà vu. Something about it nagged at me, scratching at the back of my brain. It wasn't just the cruelty, it was the familiarity. Fallen didn't read Arthurian legends. She didn't care about mythology or healing islands. Why was she so attached to this specific name? And then a memory flickered in the back of my mind, a ghost from the past. Fallen had used that name before, long before she was pregnant, long before she met Bowen. Driven by a hunch I couldn't explain, I went home and dug through the back of my closet, pulling out a dusty box of old electronics. I found an external hard drive from my college years, wrapped in tangled cords. Fallen and I had attended the same university for 1 year, my senior year, her freshman year, before she dropped out to pursue modeling, which turned out to be nothing but sleeping until noon. I plugged the drive into my laptop, the fan whirring loudly as it scanned the archived files. I searched through folders of sociology essays and research projects until I found a forgotten folder labeled Fallen's Project. I remembered now. Fallen had asked me to help her edit a video for a sociology class she claimed she was taking about digital identities. I opened the folder, my heart pounding against my ribs. Inside were screenshots and video files. My breath hitched as I clicked on the first image. It wasn't a school project. It was a profile page for a website called Sugar Bobby's Elite. The profile name was in bold, gold letters that shimmered on the screen, Avalon. The bio read, "Wild, discreet, and expensive. I'm not here for love, I'm here for luxury." The photos were blurred to hide her face, but in one, her distinct star-shaped birthmark on her shoulder was clearly visible. Avalon wasn't a tribute to a legend. Avalon was the alias Fallen used to sell her time to older men to pay for her sorority dues and designer bags, all while lying to our parents about a scholarship. I sat back in my chair, stunned by the revelation. I needed to know if this was just a relic of the past or if the digital footprint still existed. I used my skills as a professional archivist, my actual job, to dig deeper into the internet's history. I went to the Wayback Machine and typed in the URL from the screenshot. The page loaded slowly, ghost-like images forming pixel by pixel. There it was. The profile had been active for 3 years, overlapping with the time she met her husband. I scrolled through the reviews left by users. Men, sugar daddies, had left comments that made my skin crawl. Avalon is a firecracker. Worth every penny. Best weekend in Vegas. I found a video file she had uploaded as an introduction to prospective clients. I put on my headphones, turning the volume up. "Hi boys, I'm Avalon," Fallen's voice purred, unmistakable despite the affected sultry tone. "I hate boring, conservative guys. I want a wallet, not a husband. Send me a gift to unlock my private gallery." This was the woman Bowen Stetson thought he had married. Bowen, whose family was so conservative they didn't believe in dancing on Sundays. Bowen, who thought Fallen was a pure domestic goddess who had saved herself for marriage. The leverage I held was radioactive, capable of destroying everything. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the print button. I could leak this online anonymously right now. I could send it to Bowen in an email, but that was too messy. It would look like a vindictive attack from a jealous sister, and Fallen was a master manipulator. She would spin it. I needed to be smarter. I needed Fallen to sweat. I wanted her to know that I knew, and to give her a chance to back down before I dropped the nuke. The next time I saw her, at a family brunch the following Sunday, I played my first card. We were eating pancakes, the atmosphere tense. "You know," I said casually, pouring syrup on my plate. "You're right about the name. Avalon is a very memorable name. It reminds me of your college days. Didn't you have a project with that name?" Fallen froze mid-bite. Her fork clattered onto her plate with a loud clang. She looked at me, her eyes wide with sudden panic. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, looking at our parents. "I dropped out, remember?" I smiled, sipping my coffee calmly. "Oh, I remember everything on that hard drive. The video editing, the bio." She paled, the blood draining from her face as she realized I wasn't bluffing. But her arrogance kicked in. She assumed I wouldn't dare ruin her life. She assumed I was too nice to ever use it. 2 weeks later, I was invited to a formal dinner at the Stetson estate. The Stetsons were old money, serious, stiff, and obsessed with reputation and lineage. The dining room was cavernous, silent except for the clinking of heavy silver against fine china. Mrs. Stetson, a woman who wore pearls to breakfast and judged everyone by their shoes, beamed at Fallen from the head of the table. "We are just so delighted with the name Avalon," she said, cutting her steak precisely. "It sounds so Arthurian, so noble. It fits our family heritage perfectly. I took a long sip of wine to hide the smirk threatening to break across my face. Arthurian and noble, I thought. Actually, it's the name of the Motel 6 she used to meet clients at off the interstate. Yes, Bowen added, placing a loving hand on Fallen's hand. It represents purity and mystery, just like Fallen. I watched Fallen squirm in her seat. She refused to meet my eyes, staring intently at her roasted potatoes. She knew that I was the only person in the room who knew the mystery, cost $500 an hour, and involved weekend trips to Atlantic City. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Fallen, in a move of pure narcissism and an attempt to assert dominance over me, forced me to co-host her baby shower. "I need you to save me money," she told me on the phone, her voice demanding. "Mom says you have to help, and since you're the creative one, you can handle the decorations and the entertainment." She had a specific, ego-driven demand. She wanted a history of the name display. She wanted to invent a fake backstory about how she saw the name Avalon in a dream surrounded by angels. "I want a slideshow," she demanded, chewing gum loudly in my ear. "With music, make it look magical. I want everyone to cry when they see it." I held the phone, listening to her delusions. A plan began to form in my mind, a dark, perfect plan that would give her exactly what she asked for. "Okay, Fallen," I said, my voice sweet and compliant. "I'll make the slideshow. I'll make it very detailed. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly where the name comes from. I won't leave anything out." She hung up, satisfied, thinking she had cowed me into submission again. She had no idea she had just handed me the match to burn her kingdom down. I arrived at the Stetson estate a week before the shower to set up the layout. Outside, smoking a cigarette near the stables, was Coulter, Bowen's younger brother. Coulter was the black sheep of the family. He was cynical, smart, and he hated Fallen with a passion. He saw through her perfect wife act from day one. He spotted me carrying boxes of decorations. "You have that look," he said, flicking ash onto the pristine grass. "The look of someone holding a grenade. You're going to burn the house down, aren't you?" I hesitated, then decided to trust him. I needed an insider. I pulled out my phone and showed him one single screenshot of the Avalon profile from the archive. Coulter looked at it, squinted, and then threw his head back and laughed so hard he choked on his smoke. "Oh my God," he wheezed, wiping tears from his eyes. "My mother is going to have a stroke, a literal stroke. This is the best thing I've ever seen." He looked at me with newfound respect. "Do you need help?" "I can make sure the projector is working. I'll even lock the doors so she can't escape the room." We shook hands. The alliance was formed. I gave Fallen one last chance. It was the decent thing to do, even if she didn't deserve it. I went to her house 3 days before the shower. She was sitting in the nursery, surrounded by Avalon monogrammed pillows and expensive toys. "Change the name," I said quietly, standing in the doorway. "Pick anything else, Jane, Sarah, Elizabeth. If you use Avalon, you are honoring a lie, and you are hurting me intentionally." Fallen sneered, her face twisting into an ugly mask of contempt. "You have nothing, Odette. You're just a bitter, childless loser who can't stand that I won. I'm the golden child. I always have been. If you try to ruin my shower, I'll tell everyone you hit me. I'll tell them you pushed me down the stairs. Who will they believe? The pregnant mother carrying the heir or the jealous spinster sister?" I looked at her, realizing there was no humanity left in her. She was consumed by her own image. "Okay, Fallen," I said, turning to leave. "You made your choice." The day of the baby's shower arrived. The Stetson estate looked like a page out of Vogue. White tents were set up on the expansive lawn, waiters in tuxedos circulated with trays of cucumber sandwiches, and a string quartet played soft classical music. The atmosphere was stiflingly perfect. Fallen sat on a velvet throne, literally a throne she had rented for $500, wearing a white lace dress, playing the role of the saintly mother to perfection. Bowen stood beside her, bragging to his business partners about his traditional wife and the legacy they were building with this child. The guests were the who of the city's elite judges, doctors, socialites. I arrived carrying a laptop bag and a beautifully wrapped special gift. Fallen smirked when she saw me, thinking I had fallen in line. "Try not to embarrass me," she whispered as I passed her throne. "Don't worry," I replied, gripping my bag. "I'm just here to educate." We played the usual insufferable shower games that rich people love. Guess the girth of the belly. Taste the organic baby food. Then came guess the baby name meaning. Guests wrote down their guesses on fancy gold leaf cardstock. Most people wrote things like Island of Apples, the real Arthurian meaning, or paradise, or pure. Fallen beamed, reading the cards aloud, loving the attention. Yes, it means paradise, because this baby is our little slice of heaven sent from above. I raised my hand from the back of the room, standing near the projector screen. Actually, I said, my voice carrying over the crowd, stopping the chatter. For Fallen, the name has a much more modern history, a personal history that she's been hiding. Fallen glared at me, her eyes narrowing into slits. Odette, sit down, she hissed. No, I said, walking toward the projector Coulter had set up. I think it's time for the tribute video you asked for. Coulter dimmed the lights on cue. The room fell silent, expecting a montage of ultrasound photos and lullabies. I plugged in my laptop to the HDMI cable. The screen flickered to life. The video started innocently enough. It showed cute baby photos of Fallen, shots of her and Bowen smiling, and stock footage of storks flying. The guests awed and clapped politely. Fallen relaxed, sinking back into her throne, thinking I had chickened out and made a nice video after all. Then the music changed. The soft lullaby faded out, replaced by a generic, upbeat, thumping club track, the exact song from Fallen's old profile video on the website. The screen faded to black for a dramatic pause. White text appeared in a sleek, modern font, pulsating to the beat. Where the name Avalon really began. Fallen sat up straighter, confusion crossing her face as she recognized the music. The next slide hit the screen like a nuclear bomb. It was a high-resolution screenshot of the Sugar Bobby's Elite profile page. The giant gold text, Meet Avalon, loomed over the room, 10 feet tall. The photo was there, Fallen in provocative lingerie, her face blurred but the star-shaped birthmark on her shoulder displayed in 4K resolution on the screen. The bio was legible to everyone in the room. I hate conservative guys. I'm looking for a wallet, not a husband. My time is expensive, but I'm worth it. No strings, just cash. Below it were the reviews from men. Avalon rocks my world for $500. The room went deathly silent. A teacup shattered on the patio stones, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Mrs. Stetson gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in horror. Bowen stared at the screen, blinking, his brain unable to process what he was seeing. I stepped forward to the side of the screen, feigning innocence and enthusiasm. I found this while looking for old photos for the montage, I said brightly to the stunned crowd. Fallen, I didn't know you were such an entrepreneur in college. It's so brave of you to name your daughter after your business persona. It really shows how proud you are of your work. The chaos erupted instantly. Fallen screamed, a primal sound of rage and terror. She lunged for the projector, knocking over a tray of sandwiches, trying to rip the cords out. Turn it off, it's a lie, she shrieked, clawing at the table. Coulter, standing near the power source, accidentally stepped in her path, blocking her with his body. Whoa, careful, Fallen, he said, suppressing a grin. You don't want to hurt little Avalon, let's watch the rest. Bowen stood up slowly, looking like a man waking up from a coma. He walked toward the screen, ignoring his screaming wife. He stared at the date on the profile screenshot. Active, 2018-2020. He did the math in his head. I could see the gears turning behind his eyes. They had started dating in early 2019. She had told him she was studying late at the library on weekends. She had told him she was working a retail job to pay for books. Is this you? Bowen asked, his voice quiet but terrifying in its intensity. Fallen grabbed his arm, tears streaming down her face. No, it's a deepfake. Odette made it up. She's jealous. She's trying to ruin us. She hates me. Bowen looked at the birthmark on the screen. He looked at the birthmark on Fallen's shoulder, visible because of her sleeveless dress. The birthmark, Fallen, he said, pointing. Is the birthmark a deepfake too? It's not fake, I said, pulling a document from my bag. I have a notarized affidavit from the website host confirming the account belonged to Fallen's email address, and just in case there is any doubt. I pressed a key on the laptop. The audio clip played. Fallen's voice, her distinct, slightly raspy laugh, echoed through the garden speakers for everyone to hear. Hi boys, I'm Avalon. Send me a gift to unlock my private gallery. There was no denying it. That was Fallen. The Fallen who claimed to be a virgin on her wedding night. The Fallen who judged everyone else for their morals. The facade crumbled into dust in front of the people she wanted to impress the most. Mrs. Stetson stood up. She was shaking with a rage that was terrifying to behold. This was a woman who cared about reputation above all else, who believed in the sanctity of her family line. "You brought this filth into our house," she whispered, her voice cutting through the garden air. "You want to name my granddaughter after a prostitute alias? You want us to call her by your working name." Fallen, cornered and panicking, made a fatal error. She tried to defend herself by minimizing it. "It wasn't prostitution," she screamed, stamping her foot. "It was sugar dadding. It was just for money. I needed bags. I needed to fit in with the rich girls. It's not a big deal." The confession hung in the air. She had admitted it. She admitted she sold herself for handbags. The Stetson family looked at her with pure revulsion. Bowen looked at his wife as if she were a stranger, a creature he didn't recognize. The humiliation was total. His business partners were there. His pastor was there. Everyone knew. "Get in the car," Bowen said, his voice devoid of emotion, like a steel door slamming shut. "We are leaving. Don't speak to anyone. Don't look at anyone." Fallen turned to me, her mascara running down her face, her eyes burning with hate. "I will kill you," she hissed. "You ruined my life." I smiled, closing my laptop and packing it away. "No, Fallen," I said calmly. "You ruined my name. You ruined Maya's memory. I just returned the receipt. At least I didn't charge for the show." As she was practically dragged away by her husband, the guests sat in stunned silence. Coulter walked over to me and handed me a glass of champagne. "To Avalon," he toasted. "May she rest in peace." That night, my phone blew up. My parents called, screaming. "How could you?" My mother sobbed into the receiver. "You humiliated your sister. You ruined her marriage. You destroyed this family. How could you do this to a pregnant woman?" They weren't mad about the lies Fallen had told. They weren't mad about the prostitution. They were mad that I exposed it. They were mad that the golden child was tarnished. "She ruined my marriage," Fallen must have told them, spinning the victim narrative. "I didn't ruin anything," I told my mother, my voice steady. "She built her life on a lie. I just turned on the lights. If the truth destroys her marriage, then the marriage wasn't real to begin with." I blocked their numbers. I sat in my quiet apartment, finally feeling at peace. The name Avalon was gone, burned to ash, but so was the hold they had on me. The fallout was nuclear. 2 weeks later, I heard through the grapevine, Coulter, that the Stetsons had demanded a prenatal paternity test. Because Fallen had admitted to sleeping with men for money during the time she met and started dadding Bowen, they no longer believed the baby was his. They suspected she had trapped him. Fallen was terrified. She had to undergo the test, humiliated further. The results came back. The baby was Bowen's, but the damage was done. The trust was obliterated. Bowen looked at her stomach not with love or excitement, but with suspicion and disgust. The fairytale pregnancy was over. The nursery was a reminder of the lie. The baby was born a month later. Fallen, in the delivery room, tried to write Avalon on the birth certificate paperwork, still trying to cling to control. Bowen snatched the pen from her hand. "Absolutely not," he said, his voice cold. "I will not have my daughter named after your hooker persona. That name is dead to us." He named the baby Hollies, a traditional Stetson family name. It was stiff, old-fashioned, and unromantic. Fallen cried. She hated it, but she had zero leverage. She had lost her voice in the marriage. She was no longer the princess. She was the liability, the embarrassment that had to be managed. Bowen didn't divorce her. The Stetson family was too religious, and now there was a child involved. Divorce would be another scandal they didn't want. Instead, he punished her. He forced her to sign a brutal post-nuptial agreement. Under the new terms, Fallen received no allowance. She had no access to joint accounts. Her credit cards were canceled. She was required to attend individual therapy twice a week and marriage counseling. She was effectively under house arrest in a gilded cage, allowed to stay only to raise the child, but stripped of all power, freedom, and luxury. She had wanted a wallet, and now the wallet was snapped shut, locked tight. 6 months later, I sent a gift for baby Hollies. I included a small note for Bowen, apologizing for the scene but standing by the truth. To my surprise, he invited me to visit. I went to the estate. The nursery was different. The Avalon's Palace neon sign was gone, replaced by tasteful, boring beige decor. Bowen met me in the living room. He looked tired, older, the light gone from his eyes. "Thank you," he said unexpectedly. For telling the truth, it hurt, but I didn't know who I married. I needed to know. He let me hold my niece. Holly's was beautiful. Fallon sat in the corner of the room, watching us. She didn't speak. She looked defeated, her spark gone. She was trapped in the life she had schemed for, but it was a prison now. I left the estate feeling light, the weight of the past finally lifted. I drove to a cafe in the city, opened my laptop, and started a new file. I had quit my job at the archives. I was finally pursuing my dream of graphic design, using the inheritance I had saved. I typed the name of my new business at the top of the page. Avalon DSIGNS. I smiled. The name didn't belong to a baby anymore. It didn't belong to a secret life of lies. It belonged to me. Fallon had stolen the name because she wanted to be someone else. I took it back because I finally knew exactly who I was, and I was going to make it mean something beautiful again, just like I promised Maya.